First of all, I want to thank Ashish. I heard from other speakers that they can reach 1,000 corporates, but they can't reach you. So thank you for giving me the privilege to be on this platform. And thanks to the UnPluggd team. It was great to hear all the pitches. So today I want to focus a lot about our story first, about how we built this company out of India and how we took it outside India. And if you look at our sort of revenue today, 97% of our revenue is outside India. So we're kind of leading globally, and India is also a market, but a small market. And not a lot of Indian companies have achieved that. So I want to spend some time on sort of the process of doing that. So we're basically powering customer engagement in the post-PC era. So mobile has sort of changed everyone's lives. I conduct my life on my mobile phone. Literally everything I do is on my mobile phone. I think the same is the case with everyone in society. And we saw that inflection point and said that the ways in which companies engage with customers is changing. So let me grab the clicker here. So those are some of the companies that actually use us. So how many logos on that? What's that? Oh, great. So how many logos on there can you recognize? Powered by Helpshift. So Flipboard, Clash of Clans. Does anyone play Clash of Clans? Yep. Very few hands. Clash of Clans. Wow. Ghana.com. That should be a lot of hands. Okay. All right. So these are some of the leading sort of apps. What's going on with the clicker? Oh, there you go. So here's sort of why we started on this journey, right? So I don't know if you're aware, India is one of the largest BPO contact center places in the world, right? And $125 billion is spent every year in technology, in people, in contact centers, in just that whole process where customers are connecting with companies. And then there's the CRM market, which is about $27 billion. So all of this enabling technology, you combine it, it's about $150 billion is being spent every year by companies to ensure that when you have a problem and you pick up the phone, somebody can talk to you and solve your problem, right? Yet, what you see is this, right? And this is, you can go to any sort of large brand, and that's, I just pulled that off of Twitter, right? Somebody's complaining, they posted a photograph of their phone. They were on hold for 1 hour and 30 minutes with Comcast, right? And you see that. It's not just a phenomenon in the West. In India, when you call a contact center, you're probably made to wait. And that's after spending $150 billion to optimize that whole process, this is what customers are getting, right? And they don't deserve that. So we saw that, all of this customer relationship is moving to mobile. Everybody is consuming products and services from a mobile device. And the way they are demanding contact is through the most familiar ways in mobile, right? I would argue that you spend more time using messaging applications like WhatsApp or iMessage than calling someone. Is that a true statement? Yeah? Raise of hands. Who agrees with that? That's a lot of hands, right? So we spend a lot of time talking to people through messaging apps because it's very efficient on this sort of touch type kind of device. It's very efficient to send off a short message, right? So we saw that behavior, and we took that, we encapsulated it in a service, and we gave it to our customers and said, why don't you encapsulate that inside your app? So for example, SBI, right? Very soon, SBI is going to have, if not already, a mobile app for banking, right? In the US, people don't use websites anymore for banking. They don't visit a branch. They pull out the phone and they use their mobile app, right? Why? Because I can take a picture of my check and deposit it online. I don't have to go to a bank and feed the check in, right? So basically, that's one of the biggest reasons why the shift to mobile banking has happened. Yet, none of the banks are providing this type of service, right? They still make you call a number, get in line, take a ticket, wait, talk to an agent to get service. It's completely frustrating. So our hypothesis was that if you make it really easy for customers to engage with the company, that the customers will enjoy that a lot more. It's asynchronous. It's not intrusive on their time. They can send off a message, wait, it comes back right in the app, and the problem solved. So we created this whole market in 2013. We were the first company that said, customer service needs to go in this direction. Everybody's going to be using an app, and chat needs to be the way in which it needs to be done from within the app. So what we really were building in 2013 when we came out with this product was the next generation customer engagement platform, right? And today, this is sort of how much we've scaled. So we launched the product in 2013. It took us a while to go and convince a bunch of people that this way is better, right? They were all used to the old school IVR way or the email way. And then, it took us a while to evangelize why this was better. And after doing that, and these numbers are kind of old, we're now deployed on about 1.3 billion devices. That's a pretty big number. There are very few mobile SDK companies in the world that can claim sort of an install base that's this big. In a given month, we're serving about, right now, about 500 million monthly active users on our platform. And every month, we're helping about 100 million customers, right, through our service. And these are all sort of the top apps in the world that are using us. You'll see a lot of gaming companies, a lot of content companies. You'll see on-demand apps like Ship. There's a bunch of Indian on-demand customers as well, so I'll just walk you through the list. So in just 2 years, we kind of own this mobile gaming market. So from the largest brand, which is Supercell, that makes Clash of Clans, to Zynga, everybody's replaced their traditional CRM, which was either Salesforce or Zendesk, and they moved over to Helpshift. And so we kind of own this gaming market. We did a press release last night. 17 out of the top 50 game developers in the world are using Helpshift today, right? So that's what a leadership position means, right? Is that in an entire vertical market, you're dominating that market. And we dominate in other verticals as well. So digital content, so Flipboard, Ghana.com, all those apps are content apps. We're kind of dominating that category. Productivity is very big. Microsoft is a big customer. Here's the irony. So we power the Outlook app on iOS and Android. Outlook happens to be an email client. It's the world's largest email client, and they don't use email for customer service. They moved to in-app, powered by Helpshift, right? So if you have Outlook, if anyone has Outlook on your phone, launch it, go look at the help screen, and it'll say powered by Helpshift prominently. So it's very interesting. We've set this sort of trend that global leaders like Microsoft, Adobe, are all saying, hey, this is really important. This is the way that the world's going to move. E-commerce is another big sort of category for us. So if you look at large format retailers like Target, on-demand apps like Lux, in India, Tiny Owl, there's a whole bunch of them, PepperTap, Swiggy, they're all customers of ours. Common Floor, Redbus, Ghana.com. So those are all our Indian customers. There's a bunch of music apps, health and IoT. We have a bunch of health and IoT apps as customers. Honeywell makes a thermostat that competes with Nest, so they're one of our customers. Payments and finance, very interesting. Western Union, money transfer. How many of you know Western Union? Raise of hands. How many of you know TravelX? If you go to an international airport and change money, right, you go to a TravelX counter, right? So TravelX and Western Union, they've basically launched Helpshift in their apps today. So I think payments and finance is a pretty interesting space for us. And travel and transportation, right? So we don't have Ubers and Olas yet, but it's a matter of time we will have them. And so that's sort of how we've built this business steadily over time, and we've kind of dominated in this sort of niche mobile market. Our story is very interesting, so I wanted to walk you through the sort of the journey, right? So you've heard a lot of on these stages now, it's become very common to talk about mythical animals like unicorns and cockroaches, right? Somehow they kind of merge or blend in this stage. So we're neither, right? We're not a cockroach, we're not a mythical animal either. Our journey is, I think the standard journey of a sort of a global startup, right? So we started with an idea back in 2012. We were fortunate that Nexus, who's one of the sponsors today, was our early investor. We were a small team out of Pune. I had just exited sort of Yahoo, and I'd sold my previous company to Yahoo. We exited that, and with a bunch of people, we were just having fun in Pune, and the Nexus folks showed up, and they said, we want to put some money in you. I'm like, we don't have a product. We don't have any idea what we're going to do with it. But they said, we want to give you $500,000. Just take it. You'll do something with it. So we took the check as a seed round of funding, and that basically was the forcing event, which forced us to go and start to think about what we wanted to do. So we took about a year's time to build a product. In June of 2013, we actually launched the first version of Helpshift in the market. And a year later, or less than a year later, we had big brands like Supercell, Flipboard, all of them using our product, right? And that was pretty interesting. In the later part of my presentation, I'll tell you why it's important to go close big marquee accounts very early in your life, right? And it's hard, but there's a story behind that. And then in 2014, June, we raised our Series A funding, which is about $10 million. Intel put money into our company in Series A. We have just closed a Series B. I cannot disclose it because we haven't announced it, so you will hear about it in a few weeks. It's a pretty interesting round. And the team was largely built out of India, so all of our engineers are in Pune, and we have about 60 people in Pune now. And I have a fairly large sales and marketing team in San Francisco, about 20 people. And my background is I've spent my entire life in B2B enterprise software, and that's what I understand. I will probably never start a B2C company because I don't understand how to go run a B2C company or an e-commerce company. So let's come to sort of the actual topic of discussion today, which is making India lead globally, right? One of the things you want to do, and this I don't see in a lot of B2B, and I'll frame my talk in the B2B space, right? B2C is a different animal. I don't want to go there. So in B2B, the thing you really want to do is establish a new market, however small it may be, but be the king, right? In India, what we see is a lot of Me Too products in the B2B space. So you look around B2B, all the players that are there in India, I don't think you can point to any company and say, these guys created a new market and they are the kings there, right? Typically, it's companies that have gone after like a leader that's a global leader, usually by commoditizing the price point, right? By making it cheap or some other sort of little lever that they've pushed, right? And that, to me, is a problem. If you want to lead globally and be perceived as a leader of a category, you've got to invent it. If you don't invent that category, you're never going to be a leader, right? Today, we're talking about smartphones. There are Android devices everywhere, but people remember Steve Jobs and the iPhone. That basically created the market, right, of smartphones. So the leader is always a very memorable kind of position to be in, the leadership position. It makes your marketing very easy. The reason I put a Zendesk page up there is that that was our story in 2012. That's how the Helpshift website looked in 2012 when we launched our product. In December of 2014, Zendesk put up a page that looked like our page back in 2012. So the reason I say that is the quote leaders in this space have now become followers, right? They're following us. Same thing with Freshdesk. Classic, another great Indian company. They have this product called MobiHelp. They have a page that looks exactly like the Helpshift page, right? And they also claim that they're sort of leaders in this space. The reality is somewhere else. So the other thing you want to do when you want to lead globally is that you want to have leadership customers, customers that are viewed as or perceived as leaders around the world, right? So when we throw up logos like Supercell or Microsoft or Target, these guys are absolute leaders in the world. Like does everyone know all the 4 logos there? Raise of hands. Yeah, so memorable brands, leader companies or companies that lead work with other leaders, right? So that's typically how this works. And the other thing I see sort of Indian companies shy away from is that they do not establish a local team in the market that they want to go win. So we decided very early that the market we want to win is outside of India. So our team is all based in San Francisco. That's my team in San Francisco. And we painstakingly built this team because our go-to-market is very different. There are alternative ways to go global, right? So Freshdesk has proven that there are other ways to do it. So the other ways to do it are you can sit in India, you can do a whole bunch of marketing, and go after the SME segment, because the SME segment really doesn't need a lot of human interaction for selling, right? You're not selling to a big brand. A big brand like Microsoft or Supercell is not going to buy from a website. They need to talk to you. They need to understand that you're a real company. They need to understand that you have a real product that matches their needs. The sale is very different. The price points are very different. how you sell to them is very different, right? So you can build this long tail oriented business from India much easier. That's why you see a lot of the Indian B2B startups basically do the long tail kind of, they start at the tail and try to move up. Moving up is extremely hard, right? I can give you lots of examples. Zoho, Indian company, they claim that they're a leadership CRM company. We know the reality. The reality is their Salesforce, which makes $6 billion a year, they're kind of the leaders in this space. Zoho, I'm not even sure. I think they make less than $500 million in revenue. And they've been at it for like more than or about the same time that Salesforce has been at it, right? So that's kind of one model. The Zoho model is to go after the tail and to like, sell commoditized products, do some internet marketing, and that's how you build it. Or you go build a company like Salesforce and be able to, take down big deals like Microsoft or Supercell, right? So for that, you will need to invest a lot in local sales and be able to do that really well. You'll need to hire local salespeople. They're expensive. Invest in them, train them, and once you find like product market fit, that engine starts working really well. And that's how you close sort of big deals, right? The other thing I want to tell you is when you're dealing with very large clients like Microsoft or Western Union, all of these people, they look at their peer group, right? So they're not going to go buy a product that does not have customers of their peer group using it, right? So for example, Microsoft will not go buy a product that's powered by Freshdesk, or they will not buy Freshdesk ever because their peer group companies don't use Freshdesk, right? So it's very important for you to have that segmentation in mind and to go after the market that way, right? So the game we are playing is going after the head of a market, right? And there are companies that go at the tail of a market, like WebEngage and a whole bunch of companies. Two very different models. So no right way, no wrong way. This is just our way, right? One of the things we obsess about is customer success, right? So we've spent an inordinate amount of time in making sure our customers are successful. So we build a lot of resources online for that. And the fifth one is not a slide, but I'll just say it. Building memorable companies takes a long time. So the last piece of advice I'll leave you is have a lot of patience, right? To build very lasting, large B2B companies takes a lot of time. You can't do it overnight. On an SMB kind of platform, you can do it, you can grow much faster, right? Simply because you've got a much wider market, though the unit economics are smaller, but you can like acquire customers very fast. It's kind of like the consumer, like a B2C kind of business, right? So you can acquire customers very fast and grow rapidly, but then you start to hit the peak of that market very quickly, right? So like just in the case of Zoho, because they were going at the tail, they've kind of peaked out at a certain level, and you see like Salesforce growing every year, every quarter, becoming a bigger and bigger company. So it's just, so patience is a big virtue that I think Indians need to learn. We are very impatient. We want things to happen now, right? We find ways to hack and do jugaad and make it happen now. Building a company is a painstakingly long process. And so one thing that I will ask you to do is to build a lot of patience and try to build a very memorable, lasting company. So on that note, thanks for having me here, and I'll open up the floor to questions.
Yeah. The question is, so getting large customers, large logos is important. How do you break into the first large customer?
How do you break? That's an interesting question that pretty much everyone I've spoken to in India asks. How do you break into that first large customer? It's just having the clarity that that's what you want, which is you want to work with large customers, and then just going and talking to a lot of people. And then convincing, and if you have a product or a proposition that is so new that it intrigues the customer, then they will do it, right? So for example, Supercell, who was one of our big, large customers, like early large customer, they were a big Zendesk account. And we went and like pushed. We went into meetings where we could find the meetups in San Francisco where Supercell would hang out, right? Or some people from Supercell would hang out. And we would go meet with them and we would say, look, here's this great way in which your customers can benefit. Why are you not doing it? And they heard us like a couple of times, and then sort of made sense to them. So they came to our office one day, and it was like this small room. We were like very small at that point. We were like 3 or 4 employees in San Francisco. And here's this big billion-dollar gaming company. They come to our office, and they're like, okay, tell us about yourself. Tell us about your engineering. And then we started talking about this big scale game, right? Like we do this thing, but for large scale. Supercell is like one of our sort of largest customers from a volume standpoint. I can't even disclose the numbers. They're like huge. All I can say is we process about 70, 80,000 chats per day for Supercell on our platform, right? That's a big number. I've talked to a lot of companies, and they say that kind of scale is hard for a lot of companies to handle. And they had to convince themselves that this little startup, where the team is based out of India and a few people in San Francisco can actually do it. And then when I spent time on the technology and explained to them that we're kind of like WhatsApp. We haven't built this on a Java platform. This is all Erlang and Clojure. It's built for massive scale. I showed them the real-time performance. They were willing to take a leap of faith and work with us. And so they gave us an opportunity to work in their new game that they were launching called Boom Beach. It was very low risk. It was like, okay, we'll keep Zendesk for all our main customers, which is on Clash of Clans. We will give you an opportunity to go and prove yourself in this game we're launching called Boom Beach. So that was in December of 2013, or actually January of 2014, right? And so we got that opportunity, we grabbed it, and then we went and delivered. We proved that it really worked. And they saw the numbers, and it just baffled them. They were like, wow, this Boom Beach numbers are so much better than any numbers that they have on Clash of Clans or at that point, Heyday, there was the other 2 games. That decision-making process was easy. So within 3 months or 4 months of us being launched in Boom Beach, we had the entire business of Supercell. We migrated the whole business away from Zendesk. And what's more interesting is Zendesk at that point was getting X from Supercell. And we signed our contract at 3X of whatever Zendesk was getting paid, right? Because we were able to prove to them that there's so much value that we add to them that they were willing to pay us 3 times more than that. Today, our contract is about 6 times what Zendesk's contract would have been, right? So when you go and make statements or claims to a big customer and you're able to back it up, they're willing to bet on you. So that's sort of the way we did that.
Hey, thanks. I think you have a lot of very big names out there. My question is, the product that you have offered to them, why is it that most of these big companies are not able to do it themselves?
The product that we offer may look very trivial on the surface. How hard is it to build a chat application, right? It's not trivial. So the scale we handle, our infrastructure today, handles about 4 billion data points per day. So from all the apps, when they launch, so we're now deployed on over 1.3 billion devices. When somebody launches Clash of Clans, it sends a bunch of data into our system. So we're not just the chat provider, we are the CRM. So what's a CRM? CRM collects data about the user. In the old world CRM, a human being went and put data about the customer, right? So somebody would log into Salesforce and say, oh, I talked to this customer, and manually enter that. In a B2C app, there's no manual entering of data. It comes right from the app. So in a game, for example, the game would send us things like which level is the player at, how many diamonds have they bought, or what's their LTV. Based on that, they apply those rules to segment the user to do very differentiated levels of service. So to give you an example, today if you go launch Clash of Clans, right, and you've not paid a single dollar to Supercell, and you go to help, you'll get our knowledge base, self-service. They'll disable contact dynamically. They won't even let you talk to them, right? If you spent even $1, you'll get to chat, right? Then they actually monitor how much your spend is. If you're a $200 customer, you're going directly to Finland to the game team. The game team will talk to you, right? So that segmentation is possible because of the CRM data that we get. So on the surface, the solution looks very trivial, right? That, oh, why has Zendesk not been able to do what we've been able to do? Or why has Freshdesk not been able to do? Of course, Freshdesk has 700 employees. They should be able to do this, right? Trivially. No. This is a big data play. This is not your simple sort of chat, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
but few parts to it. First of all, why didn't you think of moving your bag and baggage and doing it in US, then having a base in Pune and another one in US and a local team over there?
That's a very good question.
Then I have a follow-up question, but after this.
Yeah, it's a very good question, and in hindsight, that would have probably been a very good move because there's talent that's readily available. There's pros and cons of doing it either way, but because all of our customers are there, it would have probably been easier for me to manage the entire company out of San Francisco, right? And looking back at all the challenges I've had to face in India, it probably makes a lot more sense now. And when I look back and, once I exit this company or something happens and I analyze, maybe it wasn't the right move to do it out of India. But to me, I lived in the Valley for 10 years. So I started my career in the Valley in 1994. I worked there for 10 years. And then I wanted to move back to India. And it was this sense of wanting to contribute back to the society that I grew up in, right? And I wanted to do startups out of India. And that's why I came back to India in 2004. The second thing I think about is I think the human potential in India is just incredible, right? We're like, if you think about where the Valley is at and where we are at, we're probably 2 or 3 generations behind the Valley, right? Valley has had more cycles of the ups and downs in the technology than we have, right? We are probably the second generation in tech right now. The first generation being the services generation. Now we're starting to see some sort of startup type generation, right? Just to give you a parallel in Israel, right? So look, take Israel as a country, as an IT economy. It's as large as India, right? And there are a lot of companies in Israel that go public almost every month, right? Technology companies. How did they get there? So in the 60s, IBM and Intel used to outsource work to Israel. Israel was not doing any innovative work themselves, right? They started out as a services kind of a country, and they were doing sort of, work for Americans, right? But it took them multiple years, almost 30, 40 years, to create their own ecosystem, to create their own sort of a talent pool. And as that talent pool got sophisticated, they could create companies that could compete globally. The founder of Waze was a colleague of mine in my previous startup. He's a very good friend of mine from Israel, right? And Waze is $1 billion exit from Israel. And there are many such examples of companies that actually were created in Israel that were $1 billion exits in Silicon Valley. We don't have a single example of an Indian company yet that's a big exit in Silicon Valley, right? No Silicon Valley company has come and bought an Indian company that's large, right? A startup that got big. They've done some little sort of acquisitions, $50 million kind of range, right? But no big example of an exit. That's bound to happen. It'll happen in the next generation of our companies. So I'm playing sort of this one thing, which is like I want to do something for India. Second thing is I think there's a lot of human potential, and that I don't see in lots of parts of the world. So Silicon Valley has a lot of good engineers, but we can't. I mean, here the talent pool is a lot bigger. It just needs to get a little bit more sophisticated, right? So that's sort of my view on that.
Can I ask? Shall I ask? You got quite a few customers in 9 months time frame from June 13 to I think March 2014. How did you get so many customers? What did you do? What was the trick? That's part one. Part two is you disrupted Zendex. So what is the next technology which could disrupt you? Do you get sleepless nights on that? Possibly chatbots?
No, not really. I have complete clarity into what we're going to be doing, right? So so the first question is, how did you get so many customers so quickly? It's the same answer I gave about Supercell. It's just like super hustle, knowing sort of how to deal with big companies. I spent the early part, the 10 years that I was in the Valley, I was the internet evangelist for Oracle for 4 years. So I went and told big companies why they should adopt the internet when the internet was just getting created, right? So I knew how to sell to these big companies. I hired some people early on that I was able to train and personally groom and turn them into evangelists, right? When you create a new market, there is no reference point for you to sell. So you have to be an evangelist. So you have to be a really good salesperson. So that was one way in which we did it, and then the way that I described. What was the second question?
In terms of you disrupted Zendex, so what are the possible things?
Oh, okay.
How do you?
So we didn't really, I mean, our intention when we created Helpshift was not to disrupt Zendesk. Our intention was to create a new form of CRM, right? And it just, Zendesk disruption kind of happened accidentally, right? If you really think about where we are headed, a few weeks ago, Zuckerberg got up on stage at F8, which is Facebook's developer conference, and talked about Messenger for business, right? What is that vision? If you double click on that vision, it's basically Facebook saying, chat is a medium of communication that consumers want. Businesses should talk to consumers using chat. And Facebook Messenger is the channel that will make it happen, right? We're saying that's stupid. We're saying if we are in the app as an SDK, you company can get coverage of 100% of your user base. Facebook can offer you maybe 10% of your user base, right? It's just an interesting channel. But it's not your channel, right? And we want to be the channel through which consumers on a mobile device talk to companies. So that's sort of how we look at the market.
Thank you so much. It's been a very interesting talk.
Thank you.
Here's a small token of appreciation from India.